A SWOT analysis of BIPOC refugees in Portland, Oregon by Alana Rotter, Micaiah Newland, Jessica Owens Maple. BIPOC stands for Black, Indigenous, People of Color. Portland has a long history of welcoming newcomers, hosting refugee communities from Africa, the Middle East, Asia, and Latin America. It was declared a sanctuary city in 2017, which means they have policies in place that limit cooperation with federal immigration authorities, particularly in enforcing immigration laws. Our presentation focuses on the experience of BIPOC refugees, specifically utilizing the SWOT framework to explore the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats they face while working hard to create new lives in Portland, Oregon. Finally, we'll discuss the program that we have devised that can help BIPOC refugees create pathways to occupational equity, empowerment, and long-term success. This is an overview of our SWOT analysis. We are going to break it down in the next slides. BIPOC refugees inherently bring cultural strength and resilience when relocating to a new country. Refugees are often underestimated because of language barriers, and not everyone appreciates what they contribute to their new communities. Many are multilingual, have strong cultural heritage and community networks. Being from other countries adds a global perspective that many of us who have lived in the United States our entire life do not possess. The BIPOC community shows incredible resilience and adaptability, contributing to Oregon's economy through hard work, entrepreneurship, and innovation. Refugees have strong support networks from churches and other cultural organizations, such as the Refugee Community Organization, Refugee Care Collective, Catholic Charities of Oregon, and the Lutheran Community Services Northwest. These help provide housing, food, healthcare, and strengthen community connections. Programs such as Refugee Cash and Refugee Medical provide much needed financial assistance and healthcare. The U.S. Refugee Act of 1980 created two pathways to becoming a refugee in the United States. As a resettlement refugee, a person may be referred for refugee status from the U.S. Embassy or other non-governmental organizations, or as an asylum seeker to escape persecution in their home country. The Office of Refugee Resettlement provides public benefit programs like TANF, SNAP, and OHP, which provide monetary, food, and healthcare assistance. Beyond these resources, the cultural diversity, traditions, and perspectives of the BIPOC community enrich Oregon. Oregon itself stands out as a welcoming place where BIPOC communities are not only supported, but celebrated. While the BIPOC refugee community brings incredible strengths, they also face persistent challenges that can limit opportunities. Many encounter language barriers and cultural differences that make navigating education, employment, and healthcare more difficult. In many BIPOC communities, the built environment itself creates barriers that limit engagement in meaningful daily activities. Housing may lack reliable accessibility, such as broken elevators in public housing that restrict residents with mobility needs from leaving their homes. This can lead to missing important medical care, employment opportunities, and social participation. Public transportation routes that serve these neighborhoods are frequently unreliable or unsafe, and this undermines consistent access to work, healthcare, and community involvement. Healthcare facilities themselves may represent barriers, such as lack of interpreter services, which discourages BIPOC elders and non-English speaking populations from seeking timely care. Public recreational spaces in underfunded neighborhoods are often unsafe or poorly maintained, reducing opportunities for safe leisure, physical activity, and social connection. These environmental challenges create occupational imbalance. From an occupational therapy perspective, this highlights critical opportunities for intervention, supporting individuals through skill building and adaptive strategies, collaborating with community partners to improve program access, and advocating at a systems level for equitable housing, transportation, healthcare, and recreation design. When access to stable housing and affordable healthcare and consistent employment is limited, these environmental challenges create occupational imbalance. Even when the resources exist, bureaucratic systems and complex policies can create barriers to receiving support. Systemic racism and discrimination can also affect job opportunities, schooling, and community inclusion. In schools, refugee students may struggle with enrollment process, an unfamiliar curriculum, or a lack of culturally responsive support. Finally, although Oregon provides helpful programs and policies, not all refugees are aware of these opportunities, and these gaps in outreach can leave some without the assistance they need. These challenges highlight the importance of continued advocacy and stronger community support.
So as we've gone over so far, there's a lot of strengths and weaknesses faced by this BIPOC refugee community. Um, and there's also some opportunities for us to impact them. In general, there's a growing awareness within the field of occupational therapy, which could mean more opportunities for occupational therapy to produce meaningful change for this community. Doing a quick search on the American Journal of OT, they have 65 journal articles on the topic of refugees, including the creation of a new assessment called the Occupational Justice Scale for Refugees, covering billing for this population, the experiences of refugees, how to do telehealth with refugees, ethical tensions that can arise, the social injustices faced by this community, and many more topics. And this is across the lifespan, ranging from pediatrics to older adults. And most of these, 56 of these articles, were published between 2019 and 2025. So this is something that's very much seen a lot of awareness with this population. And then to be able to help provide care and access to work with this population, we do have some grants available through different avenues. So the first option is through the Office of Refugee Resettlement. This is a federal department. They offer funding for just various initiatives and services to support refugees. We also have the American Occupational Therapy Foundation. They have some grant funding for OT research and practice, and a couple of specific ones are the Intervention Research Grant Program, as well as the Standing for Research Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity Committee grant. Within the state of Oregon specifically, again, there's a ton of funding options through the state, but some of the specific ones for this population would be grants like the Oregon Immigrant and Refugee Funders Collaborative and the Immigrant Refugee Student Success Grant Programs. And then additionally, you can find other funding sources like private donors and grants. And those are obviously things that you would have to find on your own. Diving into the threats, there's a lot of potential threats to this population. They do not have the right to vote in federal, state, or local elections, which really limits how much power they have and how much say they have and everything that shapes their lives. Um, in fact, a few years ago, Multnomah County, where Portland is, attempted to pass a law to allow refugees to vote in local elections, but unfortunately, it did not pass. There's also been shutting down of the refugee housing assistance programs, which could lead to potential houselessness. And of course, that housing instability will impact all areas of their lives. Um, Within the past few months, we've seen under the current presidential administration many threats coming into play. Um, we have the rollback of diversity, equity, and inclusion practices and civil rights protections, the crackdown on sanctuary policies and mass deportations. I think Oregon actually received a letter from the federal government last week or 2 weeks ago about the sanctuary state being a violation of federal policy. So we'll have to see what happens with Oregon's sanctuary state status. And then running the risk of federal overreach and militarization. Furthermore, we don't only have the shutting down of refugee housing assistance programs, but we face housing displacement, gentrification, and then rising rents and the overall cost of living strain the BIPOC households disproportionately, creating economic insecurity, and then limiting opportunities for this home and financial stability. Um, and then other recent federal actions have threatened Portland's access to grants that support equity and refugee immigrant programs, creating instability for the community services, like just mentioned earlier, to be able to provide those services to the BIPOC refugee communities. And then Black residents face disproportionate policing, racial profiling, and higher rates of arrests and charges. Additionally, the high-profile police shootings have deepened mistrust between law enforcement and communities of color. Um, in general, the discrimination can really impact every area of their lives. In Portland's lack of racial diversity reinforces cultural isolation for BIPOC residents and perpetuates the systemic inequities in education, healthcare, and employment. Communities remain vulnerable to racialized violence during protests and politically motivated attacks, such as the recent ballot box tampering and ongoing threats tied to national politics. For this community, we have identified some areas of need. In general, BIPOC refugees experience occupational imbalance when they are unable to engage in meaningful occupations due to the need to fight for basic human rights such as housing, healthcare, and jobs. Um, Having to struggle for the basic things like being able to afford toiletries to take care of yourself, having stable housing, being able to access an optometrist for glasses that you need. All of these things really make it difficult for them to live out their ADLs. And going off of that, if you can't live out your ADLs, it makes it really hard to live out your IADLs and be able to engage in some of those like hobbies and activities that you really enjoy, that bring skills to you, and just that help reduce your stress. And it's just a never ending cycle. Well, not never ending because we're going to try and change it. Um, but it's a constant cycle of those struggles making it more difficult to be able to fully live their full lives.
Getting into our program design to try and address that area of need and that occupational imbalance that Micaiah was talking about. Our program is called Hopeful Hobbies, and it is focused on helping refugees engage in meaningful opportunities and occupations that they otherwise don't have the time, access, or resources to engage in. So really just trying to address that imbalance of not being able to do the things that are meaningful to them because they are spending so much time and energy accomplishing or trying to accomplish their basic needs tasks that they are sometimes not able to meet. So our basic outline of this program would be that there would be 2 group meetings per week for a month. And then at the end of the month, participants can sign up for a new cycle. So whether that be like some of the same people that were in the previous month or hopefully some new people as well. It's about a 1 month cycle each time. Um, it could be located at Catholic Charities, which is a charity that Jess mentioned that's in the Portland area. But we could also utilize another refugee support organization that just has that available space and would be willing to accommodate the needs of our program. Um, participants could submit ideas for meaningful activities. So ideally, this is something that we could do maybe in the first session, just to kind of establish what kinds of hobbies and activities people feel that they are missing out on and things that they want to get back into doing. So then allowing them to kind of speak their mind and put forth these ideas for things that they'd want to do. So that way, in each following session, we can do a different activity that's kind of centered around what the participants have shown interest in. So this can be anything from crafts to sewing to art to even like group games and sports. Just whatever people and the refugees and participants in the program um, feel is important to them that they'd like to be doing. And ideally, we'd want to be doing something different just to make sure we address everybody's uh, desired hobbies. Um, and then the OT's role in this would be to facilitate a safe space for conversations about hardships and also provide education and advocacy for those in need or potential crisis. So hopefully this could be conversations between the participants, but also with the therapists to try and build that relationship and that rapport, and then hopefully get to a place of being able to assist with getting them those resources and advocating for them to have those resources so that they can get back to a balanced place. The objectives that we have for this program are number one, to provide refugees in the Portland area a designated time to participate in meaningful leisure or hobbies. Um, Another objective is to create a safe community of advocacy. So, again, advocating both from the therapist perspective, but also hopefully building each other up so that participants and refugees can learn how to advocate for one another and for themselves. And lastly, to provide access to education and resources. So, getting those opportunities to do what they want to do, but then also having um, that ability to learn where they can go if they need help. And the designated time piece, we felt was really important just because sometimes it seems that this community does not have time in their schedule when they're trying to basically just survive, to do things that are fun or meaningful. So hopefully this could create a place in their lives and in their schedule where it's just about them and doing something fun. So that's kind of the goal there. Um, as far as accessibility goes, we would hold the meetings in an ADA accessible setting and also establish rules that promote safety, cultural humility, and freedom to engage in any cultural practice. So essentially, no discrimination would be tolerated. Everyone would hopefully feel encouraged and supported to be who they are and express themselves however they want. Um, and then lastly, private spaces can be um, made available so that anyone can take any breaks if they need to. Um, and then just the last little bit here. So for the OTPF intervention types and approaches, we said that the types were occupations, advocacy, and group interventions. Because this is a group program, this is obviously targeting a group intervention because everyone is kind of benefiting from the same thing and working together. It's targeting those occupations by getting at the meaningful activities that people want to be engaging in or get back to engaging in. And then hitting on that advocacy piece, like I mentioned, both for themselves and from the therapists. For intervention approaches, we said that this was establish and restore as well as prevent. So, establishing and restoring the previous place of being able to engage in those occupations, but um, also establishing like maybe newfound ability to engage in those occupations, and just kind of trying to get back to that place of being able to do those meaningful activities. And then also hopefully some prevention with that advocacy piece of getting people the resources that they need, hopefully before they're in crisis or before they really need them. I mean, yeah. Um, so yeah, preventing like any further harm from being done by providing that education, the resources, and advocating. The funding sources that we were looking at would be potentially from the Catholic Charities, so using the charity funding or donations, or any other of the charities that are for refugees in Oregon, because there are multiple. And then the other thought that we had was for the refugee cash or refugee medical program. And then the relevant policy that we drew on for this was the Fair Housing Act of 1968, which supports refugees and the aims of our program by illegalizing discrimination in the sale, rental, or financing of housing to any individual in the US. So this prevents discrimination to refugees in housing, and it indirectly kind of supports our program because it promotes that equal access to housing and therefore equal access to occupation because they don't have to fight for housing disproportionately, ideally. It doesn't always work that way. And as we kind of wanted to consider, if the administration at any point were to amend this policy or create any kind of laws that make loopholes to that, there could be worsened occupational imbalance and definitely worsened occupational deprivation. But this was kind of the policy that we were looking at since it focuses on housing and it is kind of supportive of the refugee community in that it prevents discrimination. So that is our presentation. Thank you very much.